Welcome to Believe It or Not, an Interfaith Grand River program. I'm your host, August Edelman, and joining me today is Bishop Michael Pryse of the Eastern Synod of the Lutheran Church. Is that
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
it's great to be here, August.
So, can you start off by telling me a bit about yourself?
Sure. Um, I'm here in Kitchener-Waterloo.
Hmm.
Um, I was a parish pastor in a couple of places, one about an hour north of here, a rural area near Hanover, now May and Newstead, then to Burlington, Ontario, so more suburban, and then I was called to be an assistant to my predecessor, so like an executive assistant to a bishop. And then when he retired, I was elected as the bishop, and it has now been 25 years. So I
Wow.
find it hard to believe.
Wow.
Yeah. And I live here in Kitchener now. And I'm married. I have four adult married daughters, 9 grandkids, all live within 15 minutes of us. So
Wow, perfect.
yeah, I have a pretty good life.
Lovely, lovely. So, what does it mean to be a bishop?
Um, I once asked that in a children's message thing, and one very clever young person, I said, "What's it do?" And said, "Move diagonally."
Oh,
I just been taught how to play chess, and there's some element of truth to that. Um, so the synod, which is the regional jurisdiction that I serve in, um, consists of about 170 congregations, maybe 250 pastors and deacons that are situated between Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, and Halifax, Nova Scotia.
so just the backyard then.
So
Yeah.
it's a lot of territory, and so you're moving around a lot, diagonally, straight, forward, backwards. Your the job is to provide some measure of oversight to the work of those congregations and the work of those pastors, spiritual leadership, direction. So you're kind of like a CEO for some things, and kind of like a chief pastor, or
Mhm.
in your tradition, chief rabbi.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
So it's a really interesting job.
Yeah, yeah. You must meet everybody. Like,
Tons and tons of people in church, ecumenically, interfaith, society, government, some international work. So
mhm.
it's just a lovely, wonderful job.
So what does ecumenically mean?
Ecumenically, that would be the term that Christians would use to describe the relationship between the different Christian traditions.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
like your previous person that you interviewed today, Father Toby,
Mhm.
I was at an ecumenical gathering involving Lutherans, Anglicans, and Roman Catholics earlier
Okay,
this week. So that would be an ecumenical event. Yeah,
interesting. All right, thank you.
yeah,
I always want to know the vocabulary.
yeah,
Okay.
of course.
So tell me a little bit about your backstory. Did you grow up in the church? How did you
Yeah,
decide to become a pastor?
okay. I could eat up the whole interview time with it, so I'll try and do it quick. So I was born in 1959 in Toronto, um, to a woman who subsequently placed me for adoption.
Mm.
And 2 years later, I was adopted by this Lutheran family in Kitchener and subsequently became a Lutheran. Um, my adopted dad, his father was a Baptist minister, if you can
Oh,
believe that, who did most of his ministry at Six Nations the Grand, Oshwegan. That's where they're buried now. Um, I was active in the life of the church. Church camping was really, really important to me. But I was always interested in interacting with people from other traditions and trying to learn. Eventually, I married a Mennonite, if you can believe that. So, back to that ecumenical word, that's been an important part to me. Um, I felt a vocation to serve within the church. Um, I did undergraduate studies here at Laurier, history and English, and eventually made my way across the parking lot to Waterloo Lutheran Seminary, and I was ordained as a pastor in 1985. And I could not be more grateful for the wonderful life that the church has given me in every regard. Stimulated wonderful things, given me terrific experiences, blessed me so very much. So I'm very, very grateful.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Um, so, what are some of the main ideas of being a Lutheran that are important to you in your everyday life as a Lutheran person or as a
Mm,
bishop?
absolutely. I think the Lutheran articulation of the Christian gospel is kind of the core of who I am, that we become reconciled with God, not by our own actions, but purely by God's wonderful and amazing and all-encompassing grace. Our God is love, and we experience that love, and our task in life as people of faith is to try and express that love in word and deed, and thereby we participate in God's continued work to reconcile and redeem the world that God loves so very, very, very much. And so that's kind of the guts of it. I think in the world in which we live, there are, competing, primarily secular gospels that tell us that our worth and our value comes from the things that we do and the things that we have,
Mm.
the things that we accumulate. And I'd see those as false gospels that ultimately don't bring any measure of fulfillment in life. Um, it's all by God's grace. Everything is by God's grace. And we're privileged to participate in that.
Mm.
It's a gift.
It's beautifully put.
Oh, well, thanks.
Um, how has your community, which I mean is obviously massive, but
Yeah.
maybe your smaller community and who you see more often, or the communities you're a part of, whether they be Lutheran or interfaith, how have those impacted your faith journey?
Um, I'm always the best part of my work is doing parish visits. So I go to church a whole lot more than most people would ever want to go to church. Uh, and in doing that, I meet people, I interact with people, I hear their stories, I hear about their lives, and I'm one of those persons. I'm always really curious about other people. God made me that way somehow. So those conversations are always immensely stimulating to me, to learn about how people are trying to live their faith out in their particular context, the things that they do in their daily work, about their families, about their communities. I read tons of community newspapers so that I'm kind of up on what's going on in the towns, villages, cities that I go to visit from time to time. And I think those interactions have helped me to be, I think, a more faithful Christian, a better human being, um, a better person. And so that's where the stimulation comes. And that's a gift. And I see it as a gift of God that's expressed through all those folks that I interact with.
I mean, I certainly with Interfaith Grand River, getting to hear other people's stories and other people's perspectives, there's nothing that kind of shakes you up a little bit and goes, oh, like I should think more critically, or I should kind of get out of my own head sometimes, and
Yeah,
really gets you engaged with the world around you.
absolutely. And like the world and the human community is such a rich and big and diverse entity.
Mhm.
Like when you enter into that and enter into someone else's lived experience, um, like what a blessing. One of the things that I feel really bad about, I'm only an English speaker, and I wish I was one of those polyglots that could speak multiple languages because knowing another language gives you an entree into a whole different cultural perspective and worldview that so maybe when I retire, I will work on learning another language um, because there's so much to experience in this life and in this world.
Mhm. I
Yeah,
couldn't agree more. I also only speak English like fluently at least, and
yeah, I'm narrowing to it.
yeah, um, so can you tell me a bit about like times when you've maybe struggled in your faith or when your faith has given you comfort when faced with challenges?
Yeah, challenges. Um, yeah, one of the things that I've had the opportunity to experience in my work is international travel and visits with partners, often to places and to communities that are experiencing like horrific want, sometimes warfare,
Mm,
persecution. And I got to tell you that that does challenge my faith. And, like everybody, I think, must sometimes like, my God, like, why don't you look after this? And how can these poor souls be experiencing this? And invariably, those people that I feel so badly for, um, end up preaching the gospel to me
mm,
um, by the amazing resilience and deep faith that they express in the midst of circumstances that rock me.
mm, mhm,
And so there's a restoration that happens in that encounter. So it's kind of a push-pull that takes place. But yeah, certainly my faith gets challenged. I have questions. Um, I sometimes think that the older and hopefully more mature I get, um, the fewer answers I have, but the better questions I ask.
mm, mhm.
And I'm really comfortable living in that space.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm, I'm not sure that um, the end point of the whole faith exercise is answers. Um, it's better questions.
Mm. That's very profound. I like that.
Uh, maybe.
Oh,
And
I
I
like it.
realize it's not for everybody. Like some people uh, um, um, participate in the life of faith communities because they're seeking answers. I totally get that. I'm
Yeah.
looking for answers too. But levels of certainty that I wonder whether those levels of certainty can be actually held in this life.
Yeah. Fair, fair. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, is there anything you wanted to talk about today that I haven't asked you about?
Hmm, not particularly. But ask away.
For some reason, and I don't know why, but I'm jumping back to a conversation that happened years and years ago where there was somebody whose grandfather had died, and she ended up leaving the church, and a big part of it was, why did God take him from me?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if what sort of an answer you would give.
Oh, if I was talking to that individual, he could say, I feel so badly that you feel, you know, your grandpa's lost in death. I think I know what that place is like, and I felt that too. And what I've come to learn in my life is, that God doesn't take grandmas and grandpas and moms and dads and spouses and kids away from us. Um, we live in a world that has finite points in it, and the way this world works is we live, we die, and then the essence of the love that we received and that we left. It both goes with us and it stays behind. And I hope maybe that in time you might come to see Grandpa's death in a similar way. And I know you can't right now. So I would just tell her my experience. Wouldn't tell her what hers should be. That would be my approach.
Those are sort of my main questions.
Yeah.
I did want to ask if there's sort of anything you would like to share with the people at home, that's sort of a kind of final message that you want to say as part of this interview.
Oh, absolutely. So the work of Interfaith Grand River is work that I only know from outside as a resident of Kitchener-Waterloo. And I got to tell you that what I see is really inspiring and really encouraging. I'm not able to participate in the life of organizations and individual communities because I'm always spinning around, but there's going to be a retirement moment coming up at some point in the future. And the work that you're doing here is something that I would be very much interested in becoming more engaged in. I think you're a sign of hope to the community. You point a way where we can be better neighbors to one another, more understanding neighbors, where we can identify commonalities of values, goals, and express our common desire to bless our communities and bless our neighbors together as people who come from different faith traditions. That's such a sign of hope for our world, and we need more interfaith Grand Rivers. Magnificent.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks, August.
And thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time on Believe It or Not.
See ya. So, August, can I ask a bit more about you? So, what do you do when you're not doing recordings for Interfaith Grand River?
So I'm the administrator